thanks for your patience. I made some things hard for the tech team, so they had to fix it. So thank you so much. You're ready to start when you are, Susan.
They are ready?
Yep, they're ready.
So thank all of you for being here for the budget forum. I know it's super exciting, but we appreciate everybody taking an interest in the working of our church. I'm Susan Moon, and I'm the president of the board this year. And my wife always gets after me because I forget this, so my pronouns are she, her, and I am a late middle-aged woman with white hair, which my granddaughter insists is blonde, so we're going to go with that. And so we're going to start today with lighting the chalice. We light our chalice in hope that we center love and relationship, creativity and community as we meet, in hope that we can invite into our own hearts and into this space between us so much obvious respect and spacious grace that no matter what happens here, we emerge connected. So today I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. There we go. So for today, we're going to talk about some info from last year. Because our fiscal year starts July 1st and the annual meeting is before that, there's a little bit of business that you haven't heard about in between the last annual meeting and the end of the fiscal year, so we'll talk about that. And then we're going to share where we are this year, which is the year of 24-25, including the revenue and expenses, the reserve accounts, and the endowment. We're going to talk about the budget development process, so get ready to be excited. We're going to give you a stewardship update, review the priorities and decisions for the operational budget, and review the operational budget for the 25-26 year. Operational budgets we'll talk about later, but that's what keeps what keeps the programs going and keeps the church going. And then we're going to review the proposed capital budget for 25 and 26. The capital budget is what we use to take care of the facility, what we plan for. It's kind of like the things you have to worry about for your house, the roof, those kinds of things, and we'll talk about that later. And so I think you're the next person. And Reverend Mary and I are going to go back a little bit, but she has all the information.
Thank you all for being so engaged and interested in the administration and the fiscal part of our congregation. It's as much a ministry as the other things we do. I'm Reverend Mary. I use she, her pronouns. And the first thing I'll do is talk a little bit about last fiscal year. So that was June of 2023 through, July of 2023 through July of, you have it, July of 2023 through June of 2024. So that was the second complete year that we had when we changed the calendar. Used to be that the fiscal year here was the calendar year. We switched it. This was the second year. We're kind of, figuring out what that looks like, how that works. It does work better in many ways. It's still confusing for folks a little bit around end of calendar year things and taxes and those kinds of things, but I think we're navigating that. And we ended the fiscal year last year with expenses just a little bit over our revenue. Not by much, it's less than 0.5% of the overall budget. So generally, I think we did pretty well. If we could have the next slide. The charitable giving for last year was significant, a total of $53,622. And it goes to lots of different things, as you can see, from Share the Plate to the Minister's Benevolence Fund. That's the fund that I and others on the staff have to help people who are in need. The book sale, Faith in Action, Partner Church, the Guest at Your Table, those are the boxes that we do around Thanksgiving time. And then we had a wonderful Raise the Paddle during the auction for the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and for OUUC Tech. So I'm going to move pretty quickly into this current year that we're in. Do you have any questions about last year that you want to ask? Anything in particular? Yeah, so let me bring you the
for a microphone really quick so online people can hear.
Yeah. And I can repeat the question back, so, yeah, thank you.
I'm just curious with the 3,000 over, just generally what category that fell into, the 3,000?
You know, it was a little bit in several. So there was no, you know, particularly big expense. It was just a little here and a little there and those kinds of things. So, yeah, thanks for asking. Any other questions about last year? So then for this fiscal year, just want to comment on the charitable giving again. We're not even done with this fiscal year, and we're already way above the charitable giving of last year. We're at $61,835. So incredible generosity. Share the Plate is up this year. The book sale was an overwhelming success. The auction, the Raise the Paddle to help support immigrant families was outstanding at $15,275, and more than funded the OUUC Sound and Light to do some improvements in here, including a big repair to the piano. So just incredible generosity. Thank you so much. I do want to give a shout out to the amazing auction team this year. Yay. Yeah. So all of these folks helped with making the auction happen. It takes many hands as always, and folks did different things. So if you see one of these folks, Claudia is here right now. Thank you so much, Claudia. I'm sorry, I was thinking about the stewardship. Oh, I'm getting those mixed up. My apologies. So anyway, please do thank folks. It was a wonderful auction. So as far as where we are so far this year, if you could go to the next slide. These are figures as of the end of April, which is the last full month that we have data for. Our expenses are well under our revenues. We've had more miscellaneous income is what we call it, more gifts. We've had a higher use of our building for rentals, so our income has really been more this year. And we always have more spending at the end of the year. Troy buys all the music for next choir year, we get supplies ready, those kinds of things. And so it won't stay at 38,000, and I think we're looking really good for the end of this year to be looking well. This also doesn't include the auction proceeds, which was well over what we budgeted by $3,300. And just a reminder, at the end of the year, we appreciate pledges and those that get paid for this time. So these are the next thing I'm going to do is all of our reserve funds. And I get to do this because our treasurer, Jeff, is not here today. And I thank him for preparing these slides. So this is the money that we have. It could be called savings. We have it sitting in our bank account, and it's available to us to use for a variety of things. Some of those accounts, some of the money that we have is unrestricted, which is what this is, and that means that the board can approve using it for whatever we might need. So one of the things that we do for a cushion is we keep about 1 month of operating expenses in the bank. And so we have that, and we'll increase that again on July 1, assuming that the budget gets passed and our operating budget goes up a bit. And we have George Lanning's wonderful legacy gift sitting in the bank, and still $97,000 for that. These next accounts are board restricted, which means that the board has said this money stays for these things. Piano, sabbatical reserve, we used some of this money when I was on sabbatical last year. There's some Healthy Congregations team money and ministerial transition. Not that that's happening anytime soon, it's just sitting there waiting. So don't have to catch your breath here. Thank you, Dieter.
What is healthy congregation money?
So the Healthy Congregations team is a team of folks whose focus is on tending to the covenant of the congregation and helping when there's conflict. And that money actually was set aside quite some time ago when I understand there was significant conflict in the congregation, and it's been waiting to be used. I know that the Healthy Congregations team and the Leadership Development Committee have some plans for some congregational training this next year. So I expect that those funds will probably be used in supporting the growth of the congregation, as opposed to getting used when there's conflict, which is a good thing. It's kind of a preventative. Thanks for asking, Jean. So these are some of the capital funds that we have. And you'll hear about these again when Dieter talks about the capital budget. So we keep a building major maintenance fund. And that's board designated funds again that's set aside for what if something happens, like the dishwashers fail, or the hot water heater needs to be replaced, or something, comes up during the year, we have an emergency fund there. Or, smaller things, the lawnmower gets stolen again, or, something like that. We have the capital campaign fund. So you might recall that in 2022, we started a capital campaign. That's a 3-year campaign that comes to the end of that campaign in December of this year. So for 3 years, folks have consistently been contributing to the pledges that they made for the capital campaign. And you might recall, I certainly do, that we did that capital campaign, began with the generosity of George Lanning and his gift, because the furnaces failed in the building, right? And we had a really cold winter. And so we did the capital campaign not only to replace the furnaces, but to do a number of things that needed to be done around the building. And we still have $88,000 left, and there are funds that will continue to come in for the rest of this year. So as Jeff says at the bottom here, if you still have something left on your capital campaign pledge, we appreciate you paying that over these next 6 months or so. And then we have a little bit of, then we have the money from the auction, Raise the Paddle. We have in the next slide some other reserve accounts for smaller amounts. There's a choir fund for music. Troy uses that for guest musicians for the concerts. Was there a question? Yeah, Jim?
The set-aside funds and the capital budget, what's happening to the income that's being generated from those funds?
It's sitting in our bank account, and actually Jeff has been really diligent these last couple years about investing what's sitting in our savings account in money market and CDs so that it's generating interest. That interest is being tracked in our operational budget.
So is it allocated to the capital budget or the operating fund?
Yeah, so Jim's asking about the interest on the money that has been collected for the capital campaign. And it's it is being counted along with the interest of everything that we have in our savings account, and it's being tracked in the operational budget. It has not been allocated to the capital campaign, to capital. And I'm hearing that might be a suggestion that we look at that. So I'll take it that way, Jim, and thank you for asking the question. Any other questions before I do the last reserve account? Okay. So these are some last things that we have set aside for various things. I do want to point out that we have General Assembly scholarships. So if someone wants to attend General Assembly, particularly online, which is about $150, we're happy to support that. That's what this fund is for. So then let me talk a bit about the OUUC endowment. The current balance is $684,117. We had some significant donations this last year that raised the endowment well over the limit that's set for taking a draw. So it's up, $173,000 from last year. So some significant increases. It's invested in the OUUC Common Endowment Fund. So OUUC congregations from around the country pool their money. and we invest it together because we get better return and have it professionally managed and those kinds of things. And in February, we withdrew money from the endowment fund at $17,094, which was approved in the congregational meeting last year, that we would take the endowment draw for this year and use it toward the operating budget, and that's what we did. We didn't have to do the draw until February, and we probably really didn't have to then, but we did, because it takes a couple months to get it. So we were able to do most of the year with the money still sitting in the endowment fund so that we were getting interest and such on it. And then for this next year, the proposed draw is $28,531. We propose to use that for the operational budget again. And it's so much bigger this year because the amount of the endowment has gone up significantly. Jim?
Is that withdrawal based on the same system that Jeff recommended last year?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So Jeff, Jeff Goltz, who's the treasurer this year, and the Legacy Giving Committee do the calculation for the draw, and then we'll do that whenever we might need it next year. And if we don't need to make the draw, we won't. But yeah, it's the same formula, Jim. Any other questions about financially where we are this year? The bottom line, as Jeff says, is we're looking really good.
And so I'm going to tell you about the budget development process. As I said, our fiscal year starts July 1st. And so way back in November, December, Reverend Mary and the staff and the team start talking about what their vision for the next year is going to be, what kind of things they want to do, what kind of programs they would use to fund to move those visions forward, and then how much money they're going to need. And Reverend Mary also consults with the financial consulting team and prepares a budget that we call sometimes the aspirational budget. So we are still Unitarians, so we are still pretty grounded, but the aspirational budget is, if we could do everything we really wanted to do, what would it look like? And those numbers come to the board talks about them, and then we pass those on to the stewardship team and ask the stewardship team to use that in their fundraising. And then the stewardship campaign, it says here, is in March and April. We were so lucky this year because a lot of people that worked on stewardship last year just kept kind of quietly working in the background. And so we really had an almost year-round people working on the stewardship team, and they really started early, and it was just a great experience. So especially Zoe, if you see Zoe, thank her, because it's been great to not have to panic and start it in January so that they're ready by March. So, and I think you could see that in the way that the stewardship drive went this year. And then the next page, once we end up with the pledges that we have and we know how much money we have to spend, we kind of do the same thing again. Reverend Mary looks at the pledges, consults with the staff, talks to the teams. They talk about, again, what they're hoping to do and how the programs can still be created to make that happen in the light of what our actual money will be. And then Reverend Mary usually comes to the board and we talk about any gaps and how to prioritize and what to do and how to make sure that OUUC is still going the right direction. And then Reverend Mary prepares and brings us a real budget that we approve in May. And then on the next slide, once the board approves the budget in May, it's released to the congregation. There are a bunch of bylaws and governance rules about how early it has to be released. We have to have a question forum, which is what's happening today, so that people have time to ask us questions about it. And then we will bring the budget, which the board and Reverend Mary both have approved, to the annual meeting, and then the congregation votes on it. So this is really something we all work on together. And the budget process goes through a lot of iteration, and part of that is you voting with your pledges. So we consider all of those things, and you are the reason that we have the programs we have. And just the last slide, as Reverend Mary said, these are the people that worked on the stewardship team. If you see them, thank them profusely, and Claudia can get thanked for real now. The one thing that I thought, oh, and Jen too, don't forget Jen. The thing that I will mention is that I had several people tell me that the stewardship drive was fun this year, which I've never heard. So, so I think it really was a great experience for everybody, and you know, you all helped make it a great experience. So thank you to the lovely stewardship team, and also to all of you.
So I get to do the numbers again. And the numbers are really positive this year. As of yesterday, the pledges were at $553,849. And that's more than $60,000 in pledges over last year. Just a remarkable increase. So yay, thank you for the wonderful work on this particular stewardship drive. What you'll see in the proposed budget is $549,649, because that's what the pledges were when the board approved the budget on May 20th. So that increase of, $4,200, that probably means we'll need to use less savings, in reserves over the year. So that's what the difference in numbers is, but I wanted to let you know how positive things were looking. So these last 2 years, we've had an increase in pledges of a total of $110,000. Quite remarkable generosity. So one other thing that's a little bit different this year is we increased the assumed pledge fulfillment. So when we plan the operational budget, we assume that there will be some pledges that don't get paid. There just are. People pass away, people move, people have financial difficulty. We've assumed 97%, and we looked at the rates for the last couple years and we increased it to 98%. So the number you actually see in the proposed operational budget is $537,382. And so I just want to point out, folks often say, why do you have such a big number for the aspirational budget? Well, because that's what we aspire to. This year, we made over 96% of the aspirational budget in our fundraising. Yay. So I often say we won't get it if we don't ask for it. So we'll keep asking. So on the next slide then, some more pledge number, some more information. People like to know average pledges. You'll see that it's been going up very consistently over these last several years. Even through COVID, it continued to go up. This is the average amount. If you take the total number of pledges and the total amount pledged, this is the average. And the increase this year was 12% over last year. We did a second ask this year, which we don't often do. The gap was pretty large at the end of the stewardship drive, which never seems to end until the new fiscal year starts. But anyway, we had a big gap, and so we were ready to do a second ask. The stewardship team said, sure, we'll help you do that, which was lovely. And we had 90 people who pledged, 90 pledging units, which is sometimes couples, who increased their pledges this year. And they did so by 34%. So 80 of those people, pledging units, were members, 10 of them were not. So we had 10 non-members who increased their pledges. And that's really what's gotten us to the incredible percentage that we are. And this year we had a lot more new pledgers. We had 41 new pledgers and many more non-members who are pledging. We have an interesting phenomenon of more people who are choosing to not be members who are fully engaged in financially supporting the congregation. So it's probably a membership conversation that'll need to happen here at some point. So then on the next slide, even more numbers. So the total number of pledgers, so these are pledging units, could be a couple, a family, a single person. The highest that we've had in recent years was in 2021. And it decreased quite a bit, and then it's been going up since then. We're at 249 this year. Last year, there was a concerted effort to increase the number of pledging units, and they certainly did. There wasn't the focus this year. This year, the intentional focus was to request that people increase their pledges, and it was really successful. So, yeah, thank you for that. Any
Excuse me,
questions?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
On that. I'm recalling a figure from last year that there were 283 members.
Uh-huh.
That figure 283 What did that represent, and why is it so much higher than this?
Yeah, great question. So the number of pledging units, one unit can be a couple, which would be 2 members, right? So members are counted as individuals. Pledging units are counted by whatever entity is that makes a pledge. Could be a family, could be a couple. Make sense? Yes. So those numbers are always going to be different. Thank you for asking, Jean. It's a good question. So I put this slide in because I thought it was interesting. Karen Landsberg is the data queen for stewardship, and oh my goodness, is she fabulous. And she sent me a document that had all this stuff in it, including this, and I thought, this is really interesting. So this shows the distribution of percentage of our pledge total by years of membership. And what was interesting to me was 2 things. One is it's pretty evenly distributed across the years of membership. The other is 16% of our pledges come from people who are not members of the congregation. There's a membership conversation that needs to happen, I think. So I just thought this was interesting, and when you see Karen, please thank her for crunching all the numbers. She does a fabulous job with that. So the good news is that the average pledge has increased significantly, that donors stepped up even more when we asked them. The average increase in the pledges was $523 when we asked people, and it was a total of $74,000 that came from that second ask. Non-member pledgers increased from 51 to 66, and they account for 16% of our pledges. And the total amount that was pledged this year increased significantly over last year and was much closer to our aspirational request. So for this year, we're going to ask the congregation to vote on 2 budgets, which is new for this congregation. One is the operational budget that I'm going to talk about, and then the other is a capital budget, which Dieter is going to talk about. So we'll do the operational budget first, and then I'll pass it to Dieter. So the operational budget funds the day-to-day operations of the church. So this is staff, salaries and benefits and all the things, the buildings and grounds maintenance, the routine stuff like testing the fire alarm system and, buffing the floors and all those kinds of things. Our utilities, all of our program costs, our insurance, all those kinds of things. This is the budget that you're used to seeing every year from the congregation. This will look a lot like what you've seen in the past. And that operational budget we propose this year will be funded primarily by pledges. It's mostly pledges. There's some auction revenue, some other income like rentals, the endowment draw, and some of the reserves. So on the operational budget this year, if you go to the next slide, the pledges were less than the aspirational ask by $24,000. Last year, the gap was $75,000, so I'm just saying it was really significantly different this year, so thank you so much for the generosity. So the board and I revisited the priorities for this budget season in December and reaffirmed the ones that we used last year to prioritize the people. And that means maintaining staff and paying them as fairly as possible, to increase congregational engagement in whatever ways we could do that in our programming and staff, and to cover our costs as much as possible through pledges and fundraising, and to minimize as much as possible the use of funds like the endowment draw and savings. So that's what we had going in. These are the steps that we took to develop the budget. We made some adjustments to our assumed income. We looked at past years. We changed the pledge fulfillment number to 98%, as I mentioned. We increased our share of the plate. It's been an assumption of about $33,000 for years. Bob Brennan, the amazing chair of the share of the plate team, did an analysis and found that it's more like $40,000. So we increased that. We increased our assumptions for revenue and interest. Jeff has been doing a great job of investing our savings to get interest income. We cut our UUA dues fair share once again. And that's a hard thing to do. I'll just say we get a lot of support from the UUA. We kept it at the same level that we have this year. Their ask of us is $26,700, and we propose paying $10,000 this next year. I'll also say we're not the only congregation that's doing that these days. The UUA is struggling to some extent financially. So I would love to see us get this up, and this is how we weigh all the priorities that we have, right? And just to mention, for folks who have been around for a while, it used to be that the dues that the UUA asked of us was based on our membership number. It hasn't been that way for about a decade. It's based on our operating budget now. So just trying to change that, that's out there. Our programs received almost all that they asked for. We did minimal program cuts this year. The board cut their discretionary funds and a little bit from the Legacy Giving Committee. And as it turns out, even with all of the staffing changes that we've been having this last month or so, our staffing costs were only slightly above last year, and that includes a 2.5% cost of living increase for staff. So the next slide has all of the staff listed, because it's been some changes lately, right? Particularly in our office staff. So this is everybody. And some of the folks you may recognize, some maybe you haven't met yet. So me and Troy and Reverend Sarah, we're really visible on Sunday morning, right? Anissa is our wonderful RE assistant, is always in the back with the kids on Thursday and Sunday. And then we have a bunch of youth who do childcare and the nursery care. And the Bridgers that we had today, Leo and Salem, are two of those youth who do that work for us regularly. Ian is our brand new office manager. Thank you so much, Ian, for joining us. Delighted to have Ian on board. And he is quickly downloading everything from Isaac's brain into his. Isaac is moving to Minnesota and will continue to remotely work as our finance manager. So Isaac is going to continue to do our bookkeeping. We'll do our payroll, be our payroll liaison. We'll continue to work with me on the budget, because we've been through 2 budget cycles now, and Isaac is magnificent. So really appreciate him a lot. Maria is our sexton. Victoria is our new office assistant. If you haven't met Victoria yet, please say hello. Really delighted to have her. Teresa and Carbon at the tech desk, and Kate McHugh is someone that we have as we need a second pair of hands back at the tech table. And then, of course, Reverend Carol is our affiliated community minister, and we support her financially with some professional expenses every year, which pretty much pays for her Zoom account. So, any questions about the staffing or anything else before? Can some of the surplus from 24-25 and some of the 25-26 additional projected revenue go to the UUA? That's possible, and that'll be a question for the board. So when we look at, in July, we have a meeting scheduled at the end of July to look at this current year that we're in. And at that point, the finance consulting team will meet with Isaac and I, and we'll look and say, this is what it looks like, how we're ending the year. If there's a surplus, then usually I take that to the board with some recommendations about how it might be spent. Or saved or whatever. And so then we'll have a discussion and the board will make a decision about how to allocate that. So it's certainly possible that the board could say, yep, let's send some extra to the UUA this year. Thank you for the suggestion. Susan says she would support that. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. We wouldn't have gotten through COVID as well as we did without the support of the UUA, among other things. So.
Is there a repercussion by not meeting what UUA wants?
No, they still continue to serve us.
Okay.
And it's a little bit like the congregational budget. You know, if you don't pass the operational budget, I'm not going to quit, and the staff aren't either. We do our best with what you give us, which might be less than you want. So it's the same with the UUA, right? They don't stop serving us, and they have to stay within their budget, and so they might be trimming things and, you know, might not be as available as we would want them to be. Does that make sense, Mo? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then looking at the next slide, so in the proposed operational budget, uses 98% of pledges and other income, plus 15,000 in reserves. So this year, we're proposing that we use 15,000 from the legacy gifts, which is much less than last year. It was about 25,000 is where it ended up, because we used some savings to fund the second service when we started it. Plus all of the endowment draw, which is about 28,500, and that's what caused in the proposed budget revenue and expenses to balance. Jean?
So the George Lanning amount, which was about 98,000, is separate from the endowment, the OUUC endowment account?
That's exactly right, yeah. So the gift that George made is sitting in our bank account. The endowment funds are sitting in the common endowment fund. And donations to the endowment come with some restrictions, legally come with some restrictions. The congregation, the board can approve using the endowment draw, with a formula that we agree on, but really can't take the body of the endowment without really significant, like an emergency or something else, because when folks donate to the endowment, they donate to the long-term financial health of the congregation. So we lose some flexibility, right, when funds go into the endowment, and if folks want to make sure that it gets used for the long term, the endowment is the way. When George made his gift, Diana Finch, who was on the board at the time, Diana and I visited George, and he said, I know there's some things coming up for the congregation, and I want my money to be used in the way that it can be most useful, and I trust that the board will decide that. So we continue to use George's gift for the things as they arise. Did that answer your question?
Is it interest bearing in some way?
The reserves that we have?
No, the George Lanning 98,000.
Yep, yeah, it's in our accounts, and that's the money that Jeff has been so diligently investing in CDs and money markets. So yes, it is interest bearing, which is not really high right now, but it's some. So, yeah, thank you. Any other questions about that? Thank you so much for the thoughtful questions and the engagement. So these are the things that are in the proposed operational budget. There's a 2.5% cost of living increase for staff. The childcare staff get minimum wage, and that also went up this year. It funds two services for 12 months. Some folks wondered if we were going to go to one service over the summer. We don't have room to go to one service over the summer. So we're overflowing, and we're full, which is a great thing. So that's the tech and the childcare costs for two services. It funds a new position for member engagement and communications at 18 hours a week. And this is the part of the board's commitment to member engagement. We've been clear for some time that we need a staff person dedicated to being in the Commons on Sunday morning, continuing to join our ushers and greeters and welcoming people, doing the follow-up, helping with the new member class, all the things that we can do to make sure that people feel welcome and included, and a consistent communications plan. Thank you, Susan. Both Susans.
And Dieter, who
So I'm curious if that's going to extend someone else's hours, or if that's a brand-new person you're hiring.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's going to be, repeat the question. Yeah.
Is that going to be a new hire, or is that going to extend someone else's hours?
We will post it, and if a current staff person wants to increase their hours, we'll certainly look at that. My guess is that it's going to be a new position, because what I really want is somebody who's not at the desk and not in the office in the Commons on Sunday and on Thursday evening. So there will certainly be another job posting if the congregation approves the operational budget. We've got the job posting ready to go after the congregational meeting, so.
I see in that list, you've added new funds for Legacy Giving Committee. Can you speak to that, please?
I don't know, Susan, do you want to do that, or do you want me to, or? Dieter?
I think it was that legacy giving has been.
Maybe
oh,
Sally could speak to that?
Sally
Sorry.
could
Yeah.
speak to it because she's on the committee. That
Are you
would be
really?
awesome.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm not sure the total we ended up with, because we took a little cut to that when we weren't sure we were going to be able to meet our projected goals. But the idea of having some funds for Legacy Giving Committee is to continue to encourage people to remember OUUC in their estate plans, in their wills, et cetera. And so for the first time, this is a relatively new group, and honestly, it's been pretty effective. I mean, we've actually considerably increased the number of legacy gifts that we have. And we plan to do some kind of small event. I think what's in that budget right now, maybe 2,000?
It's a couple thousand.
Yeah,
I
it's a
think is where
couple
we ended.
thousand. So it's not a huge amount of money, but it's enough to make sure and acknowledge people who are part of that group, which I think are 13 to 15 people. And we want to try to get the word out and do some education. We've got an educational program planned for the fall. So those are the things. Does that answer your question?
Will it show up within the fundraising category,
It's in a,
ministry area?
it's in a separate category in the
separate.
operational budget. So you'll see there's a line that says legacy giving.
It's very tiny print.
So under expenses, it says ministry area board and leadership. All the things are listed there, and legacy giving is the last of the four. Okay?
Oh, I was just wondering, the virtual hymnal, will you have music notes on that?
Well, we don't know what it looks like yet. Yeah, there's a virtual hymnal coming out from the UUA.
But more than just words.
I think it's going to be more than words, but we haven't seen it yet because it's being released at General Assembly later this month. So, but there's certainly been a request for that. So the idea is that we might be able to project not only slides with words, but with notes for the people who read music. And for those who don't, you can see when it goes up and down. So pretty exciting that that's coming. And the group that's been working on the virtual hymnal has widely solicited the music that should be in our hymnal. So, you know, I expect there's going to be new music in there. Yeah, for sure. Exciting to think about.
This is probably interesting. It just came into my head. Do the tariffs have anything to do with all of this? Do they
Well,
play a role?
Yeah, we didn't assume anything regarding tariffs because there's a lot of uncertainty related to that. And I tell folks my crystal ball broke with COVID. So we'll have to see what our expenses look like for the year. You know, it could impact any number of things that we count on. And so we're just going to have to keep an eye on our expenses. We do that every month. The finance consulting team meets with Isaac and I every month, and we look at how are we doing, what's increased, what looks out of whack for what we expected. Is there something we need to do differently here? So your guess is as good as mine, Barbara. You haven't, yeah, nobody's. Yeah, it's likely it will, and we just don't know what that's going to look like. It's very chaotic. Yeah. So the next thing to do is to look at the operational budget, which is this handout that you got. I'm wondering, do you all need a stretch break? Do you want to stand up and stretch for just a minute and catch your breath? Or if anybody does, please feel free. Just take a breath, and the tech team will get up the operational budget.
Didn't talk about what it is, but
You want to look at the last slide and what was
Yes.
on it? Okay. So thank you, Teresa, I'm sorry. We talked about the new position. The board authorized a pay increase for your minister. Part of the board's job every year is to review the ministerial agreement you have with me and salary. And I have been encouraging the board to increase the minister's pay so that it's in par where it should be, so you can recruit your next minister whenever that happens. The Leadership Development Committee has not had any funding for the last couple of years. They requested some this year, so we put that back in. We talked about legacy giving. Most programs received what they requested, and then the virtual hymnal. So, yep, thank you. Do the whole list. So did folks who needed stand up and stretch and take a breath? And all right, good. So this takes a minute for the tech team because it's the back and forth between a slide and a PDF and all those kinds of things. So it'll pop up here. It's the handout that you got for folks here that looks like this. And the people online have the link. Thank you, Teresa. Everything for the congregational meeting is posted online on the website. There's a slider. That's the things that change at the top of the website. There's a slider that will take you to the page that has the links for everything. There's a lot. There's approving the minutes from last year's congregational meeting. There's 3 bylaws changes that the board is proposing this year. There's 2 budgets. There's a slate of candidates for the board. There's a slate of candidates for the Leadership Development Committee. Did I forget anything, Susan? That's a lot for a congregational meeting. So this is what the proposed operational budget. Is that as big as it can be? Yeah, I think it is as big as it can be.
Wow, it's almost not worth projecting. Right. All right, I mean, I can do.
Oh, well, yeah, that's pretty good, Teresa. I mean, maybe down 1. There you go. That's pretty good. Thank you, Teresa. Your best is just fine, thank you. So I talked about what the projected income is. It's primarily pledges. That's most of the income of the congregation. There's Share the Plate, some auction. Thank you to Susan Dotson, who does e-sales for us, primarily books. Once in a while, some other things. Yay, Susan. The interest income, Jeff's been diligent about that. We have miscellaneous income. That's any number of things that come in over the year, the endowment draw, and the reserves and savings, and that adds up to the total revenue expected. So is there any questions about what we're expecting for coming in? Okay. And then the expenses really are the usual things. So there's the ministry areas that include leadership development, fundraising, that's the stewardship campaign, board discretionary, and legacy giving. The spiritual life area is music and worship arts. So that's the funding for sheet music and choir folders and whatever else Troy may need. Sheet music comes as an electronic file these days, which Troy has to print. So that's what that looks like anymore. Then worship arts funds any supplies that we need, alcohol and candles and those kinds of things, as well as the honoraria that we pay for our guest speakers who come. I'm sorry?
The alcohol is for the chalice, by the way.
Oh, yes. Oh. The isopropyl alcohol for the chalice that we fill. Thank you, Teresa, for helping me make that clarification. It's not alcohol for the worship arts team or your minister, I promise. Oh, too funny.
Though you might need it.
We might need it, but yeah. So then faith development, there's funding for the family ministry program, which is all of the youth programs and children's programs, and then a small amount for adult education. Community life is a whole variety of things, including some supplies for the kitchen, which is also funded by the cookie sale every year. So if you remember around Christmas time, there's cookies. All of those funds go to support the kitchen, coffee and treats and such. And then the biggest part of the community life budget is the Thursday dinners. We don't break even with the Thursday dinners with donations. They fund most of it, but not all of it. And so we continue to fund it as a congregation because it's really important.
So this is a really small, minor point, but where does the cookie sale income show up?
So we have a reserve account that's called cookie sales. Yeah, and that's all behind the scenes, and we take care of that. So Isaac does the magic of making sure that that things get paid for out of that. Absolutely, yep. Thanks for asking. For those who bake cookies, it's a big deal, right? There was another hand.
I'm wondering, it's my understanding that the memoriams that are done here, that there's no charge for those. Is that correct?
There's no charge for members or supporting friends, right?
Okay.
For folks who are supporting the congregation financially. We have done some memorials here. I did one yesterday that was a rental. And so not a member of the congregation and someone who was a friend to a lot of people in the congregation. So when the family approached me about holding it here, I said, yes, we can do that. And, we charged a fee for the building use and the tech and my services and those kinds of Troy's. So
Is that listed somewhere in the budget in terms of either expenses or, I mean, when it's for members?
For members?
For members.
we wouldn't keep track of that. It's a normal part of our doing business.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cost of a memorial service, if you will, is primarily staff cost. So it's me, Troy, and the tech team, and some office support for printing orders of service and posting on the website and that kind of stuff. Everything else, all of the setup and cleanup and food and punch and everything is done by the amazing memorials reception team, which is all volunteers. Gail is one of the folks who leads that along with Melanie Ransom. Yeah, quite an amazing thing. So we don't separate those costs out. It's a part of doing our job. Yeah, like Sunday services are a part of doing our job and other things. So, yeah. Okay, thanks for the question.
As I'm thinking of this, we're kind of an old congregation, and so probably that time and that expense is going to continue to grow.
Potentially. And I'm going to push back on that a little bit because we are seeing more and more young people in our congregation, and every time somebody says we're an old congregation, I wonder if they feel welcome, right? So yes, there are elders and older adults in our congregation, and yes, we've had an extraordinary number of deaths in my time with you. It's unusual for a minister to do 10 memorial services in a year, and that's kind of what it's been like for me. And we also are growing our families and our younger people, so.
Point taken. I will express it a different way.
Yes.
In terms of saying, many of us are older in the congregation.
Yep.
So-
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and so, when I attend the board meeting every month, I give the board a monthly report, and one of the things that I've been doing recently that the board asked of me, I think, is to say, what are my priorities? And when folks are at the end of life and when there's a memorial service, that becomes one of my priorities because it has to. And so there's other things that have to wait. And that's the work of juggling everything that is requested of us. So, yeah. Thanks, Jean. So then continuing on, we talked about community life. Faith in Action is benevolences, including the Share the Plate money that we give away. And there's a little bit of program money for Faith in Action because we have speakers come in once in a while, or the Faith in Action program has shown a movie on occasion, and it's the rights to rent the movie and those kinds of things. The resource ministry is a lot of different things in a really large area. So that's all of the utilities and maintenance of the buildings and grounds, all the supplies, all of the office costs, which is the copier and the paper and the toner and all those things, the UUA dues, our fees and bookkeeping and insurance costs. The tech is a little bit of money for any tech needs, because batteries and cords and, any variety of things that come up. And so that's the resource ministry area. And then on the back side is the personnel, which is, of course, the largest part of the expenses, which is what is expected in a program-sized church. Most of the cost is personnel. I broke it down, we broke it down for what it looks like for salary, wages, and all of the benefits. And so then we have expenses and income in balance. So are there things that you want to ask about and the details?
I'm first. So this actually isn't a question, this is a comment. I've been a member here for 33 years, and I just want to say that in the last 2 years, this year particularly, the level of professionalism, detail, response to questions and concerns has ratcheted up at least 50%, if not 100. And I want to commend you, Reverend Mary, for the amount of work that you do on the administration and the team you've built and the board. I mean, we've seen ups and downs. I have over 33 years, and this is phenomenal. This is very professional, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you, Gail.
I second that.
Thank you so much, Jim. That means the world. And I don't do this by myself. We do have a great staff team. And, we continue to grow and change in new skills. And the board has been really remarkable to work with. So, yeah, thank you. And many boards have been. Yeah, online. Older congregation, I had assumed it meant the amount of time since founding. Oh, thank you, Hawthorne, for a different perspective. I love that. That's what we meant, yeah. So the gray hair is the gray hair of the building, or, our founding papers, or, yeah. Are there any other questions about the operational budget? So this will be the operational budget, the proposed budget that you all, those who are members, will be asked to vote on next Sunday. And if you think of any other questions, you can email them to me this week. It's coming, Susan. Thank you for your patience in waiting. The online folks really appreciate it when they can hear.
In the personnel section, the aspirational budget had 685, and what was decided is 670. So what didn't get funded there?
That was the grand total, Susan.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, the grand total.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So most of the difference in the grand total was the UUA
Okay.
dues.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the salaries, it does have a,
Yeah,
okay.
the
all
total
right.
for salaries for personnel actually
increased.
went up. Yeah.
I was upside down.
Yep. It actually went up because of a lot of the changes that we were needing to make. So, yep. Yeah, thanks for asking. Anything else before I turn it over to Dieter for the capital budget? Okay.
Susan's point, it'd be worthwhile putting in that extra line, the totalized personnel expenses.
The total personnel?
It's at the top.
It's at the top.
Well, then it needs a total for ministerial area.
Sorry, Jim, I didn't catch that. You want a total for?
On the previous page, or first page, ministerial area. And then you come to the grand total.
He just wants it at the bottom instead of the top.
Doesn't add up then.
So the grand total, which is it's blue on the website, it's shaded gray on your copy, is the total of all of the gray totals added up. All the expenses that are in gray, Jim.
No, just, this is technical, I guess. The gray area on the second page under personnel is a total. Or is that the total of all personnel expenses?
It's the total of all personnel expenses. So the 540, 572 is a total of all of the numbers underneath that in personnel. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6 numbers underneath that totaled. It adds up, in other words.
552 is not,
So
I'm sorry.
is that confusing for other folks, or? Because we can have a private tutorial with Jim if we need to do that.
Oh, sorry.
I suggest changing the formatting of this last page just a little bit, to put a blank space between the personnel details and the grand total, and maybe making the grand total line a larger font.
Okay.
So that people didn't differentiate.
Okay. Thanks. Anything else? All right, Dieter, over to you.
So hi, I'm Dieter Jacobs. Can you all hear me okay? Am I using this right? I'm not very good at this. So first, this is water. It's not the alcohol thing. It is water, I promise. Although for some reason I'm nervous, maybe that would have helped. But so I'm Dieter Jacobs. I'm on the board. I've been on the board for a year now, and I'm also on Buildings and Grounds. Been there several years. I'm a 6 foot tall, middle-aged guy. I go by he, him, with graying hair and graying goatee, and it's lovely to be here in front of you all. So I was here when the reserve study started, which was really great to see, and a little scary to see, because there was a lot of deferred maintenance and things that weren't going. And I want to give a shout out to the Buildings and Grounds group for making this happen and working hard through it. I also want to, now coming on the board and looking how amazing we are financially, to say, this is built on the shoulders of many, many, many generations of hard work, especially over the last, during COVID and during all these time periods. So Buildings and Grounds, the boards, the fundraising, and anybody who's a member and helping out, thank you all very much for putting us in a spot where we're in such good shape. We're in such good shape, so I had to start with that. So we decided to look through, based on the reserve study, and take a look at all the different, for those of you who don't know what a reserve study is, we looked at all the systems, appliances, equipment, building, roof, parking lot, you name it. Let's go look at these big assets that we have, because we've got this big, beautiful building that's getting it's veteran now. It's been around a while. What's the wording? So it's been around a while and needs a little refresh before things start getting really serious. And we've had some luck with people donating and getting things taken care of, with the HVAC system being updated and various things. So the board worked really hard, and also Buildings and Grounds, to really take a look at this and say, okay, we do have some of these limited funds. What do we need to do next? And what do we need to be watching out for over the next 5 years? And so we did our best to sit down and say, how could we work all of these things together and invest in the things that we had to take care of? There's certain have-tos, and then there's should-to, and we need to soon. And so we tried to do our best to balance out that needs for to keep things going here. So, and we asked the capital. So we looked out over the next 5 years or so, and we want to fund this through a capital campaign and reserve. So this money that's been specifically donated by the people in this beautiful congregation to make this happen. And we wanted to fund all of those things. So this is what we came up with, I think. Let's see if the next slide, if I've got it right. So the color coding is a little bit difficult to see. But we went with the bold and yellow are the things that we really have to do this year that look out. And the pale yellow are ones that we should do because they're usually related to that other one on that part of the list. Okay? So we said, let's get the flashing and the seals and the roof taken care of. And by the way, while we're up there doing all that, let's get it clean and paint it. Because I didn't realize this, but the metal stuff, if you paint it, it lasts longer, just like a wall. Okay? And these originals are they've got some mileage on them. And so we need to get some paint on that because we really need to take care of the roof. Right? The roof leaks, other things get damaged. So we said, we've got to do this roof. And then, while we're doing that, luckily, in the Raise the Paddle, we got money for the skylights. Hey, we're on the roof, let's get the skylights taken care of. Perfect timing. So again, that was funded. So that's what we're looking at for the roof. And part of that is you do have to take off the solar panels and hopefully get them back up there if they're worth putting up, because it's a lot of money to put them up there and they're getting older. So that's what we're focusing on for the roof. Okay? But we're not going to do the entire roof because we have limited funds. We'd like to do the whole roof, but we don't have it. So let's do the oldest part of the roof, get it clean, get it taken care of, get the skylights replaced, and get all those things going. So that's what we decided to prioritize there. We then looked at the exterior of the building, and around the windows, I don't know if you all look that closely, most people don't, but us buildings and grounds people and various Marie and other folks look at it, the caulk is starting to fail. And they need to be recalked, because if you don't recalk them, then it screws up the windows, it screws up the frames and everything. Well, then if you don't paint the caulk fails, so we're going to paint the exterior. And it already needs to be painted anyway. It's getting close, right? So let's do the painting and the caulking together outside. So we're kind of taking care of the exterior in a huge way, huge investment. And let's get the roof and let's get the walls taken care of on the exterior and really focus on that this year with the limited amount of fundings that we have. Then you next went into equipment. Okay, so we've got another heat pump. We've replaced all of them, except for my understanding is it's the big area here in the big central area where we have coffee in the commons area. That's the word, sorry. The water's not helping. We take care of that in the commons. Okay, and we want to get that taken care of. And there's also a fire alarm panel that's hopelessly outdated, and we really don't want this beautiful building to have a fire problem. So we want to get that taken care of. Now, there were some questions around the commons and the furnace. That seems a little bit high. And so we asked in the budget, rather than put off the budget another few weeks, we're having Ian take a look and see if he can find some other folks to put in some other bids, because that may be a little bit high. It seems a little high because it didn't seem to cost that much comparatively to replacing all the other ones that we did. So we're going to look at that. We still ask you to approve this level in case that's what we have to go with, but we are looking at some savings in that area if we can. Yes, we have a question over?
Well, you're just touching on my question, which goes for all of these, which is, how did you decide on these particular vendors? I mean, did you take like 3 estimates or?
We went out and got several bids on a lot of these things. I can't remember the exact process, I apologize. Okay. But we are looking at multiple bids, and we're having Ian follow up on some other bids and things. And Mary, she answers that better than me. Good.
So the amazing buildings and grounds team, when I asked them in December, will you go out and get some estimates of what this might look like so we can take it to the congregational meeting? They did. So some of the things are one estimate, one bid. Others have more than one bid. What we would most certainly do before I signed a contract is to get several bids. So this really was for purposes of you as a congregation to be able to vote on, this is what the future looks like. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dieter.
Thank you. That's a better answer, yes.
Should we build in a little bit extra padding because of inflation from tariffs, for especially like things like the gas furnace and the heat pump and the fire panel?
Well, this is our best estimate from those bids, and it may be several months. They might go up, they might go down. We don't know. So, sorry, did you have something to add to that?
No.
We're doing our best to guess here because it's chaos at that level. So hopefully he'll taco out. I mean, hopefully he will, it won't have as much of an impact, but we may have to make some adjustments down the road. That's where if that one funding comes in more, we have a couple extra grand, well, that might have to show up as if the paint prices go up or the caulk prices go up or the brush prices go up. So really good question, but we'll do our best. Yeah.
Just a point of clarification, there's a difference between a bid and an estimate. And at this point, you're at the estimate level.
Yes.
You're making an educated guess, really, based on talking to contractors and getting estimates. When the number is hard, if you will, that's a bid. But right now, we're just at the estimate level for these things. So you do the best you can to gather estimates from multiple contractors, and then you plug in a number.
Thank you, Sally. Well done.
We also have one question online since you've got the piano on there.
Okay.
But Carmen already answered it, so if you just want to read it.
Oh. We have two pianos. Do we use both of them? Can we use the best piano and sell the other versus updating the one in the sanctuary? Good question. I'm under the impression that the second piano was donated as a sentimental gift and will not be sold. Is also not not a simply better piano, but rather is better only when playing without the choir, so it's not probably possible to replace the current piano fully. I'm sure Troy would have some additions, though. Mary, have you?
This is you, Carbon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the piano, the second piano was a sentimental donation, and we have kept it not only for the sentiment, but so that we can have two piano pieces. We did at Christmas Eve a couple years ago. One of the good uses of this space for rentals is recitals, and we can have recitals that use two pianos. It's also a backup. So my understanding is what's going to happen with the needed piano repair here for the Yamaha is the repair person is going to come and remove the entire inside and keep it for about a month. And so the second piano will come in to replace this one for that month period while it's done. So we really keep it as a, two piano and backup, and when we have events in the Commons, Troy doesn't have to move the piano. So that's what that's used for. Does that address your question, Parvin, or your concern?
It was Wendy asking the original question.
Oh, Wendy asking the question, okay. So if I didn't answer that well enough, give a holler. Okay, thanks.
The funds to fix it or raise the pedal funds?
The funds to fix it are raise the paddle funds, yep, that's why we asked for it, so.
I was going to ask if this assumes the piano reserve funds are being moved into the capital budget.
It doesn't. The piano reserve funds are for, if we need an extra tuning or if there's something that breaks. And so that's been sitting for quite some time. So we're not planning to move that into the capital
So is
budget.
it raise the paddle funds?
It's raised the paddle funds for.
Have gone into the capital budget proposal.
In the capital budget, that's right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Isn't there a third piano back in the other, one of the classrooms? And I know the choir, when there's like Christmas time and things, we're all back there and we're using that piano with Troy, but it's kind of woefully.
Right. So Troy has a plan for that piano
yes.
back in
Okay.
the classrooms. Yeah, there's a plan. Yeah, we actually do have three, and it does need to get tuned back there once in a while. It just doesn't stay tuned very well, so. Pianos are a thing.
I know, wow. I thought it'd be other stuff, but that's okay. So then we looked at some other things that came to the board, and Buildings and Ground was very concerned about these things. A big one is the front steps. And the front steps, they're getting older, and they're a little harder for people to go up and down. I know I've pressure washed them a couple times myself, because that's one of the things that Buildings and Grounds does. But as of right now, it's a rather large chunk of change, and we felt that making sure the roof and the walls are better taken care of is a little more higher priority than getting that front. It wasn't a priority. It's not that it's not a priority. It's just we really got to make sure the roof and the walls are doing better and make sure those are squared away for longer term. If the stairs get harder to use, we can go around them, but if roofs leak, then we got to fix all kinds of stuff. So let's get that squared away. It's not minimizing that. It's very important. We all all end up with mobility. We all get challengers, we get older. But we really wanted to say, hey, let's get the roof and the walls taken care of, and we can look at that over the next 5 years and look at that our next budget or two to get that rolling. So I know it's very important for people. Another question?
This is more for the audience, I think, and a recommendation to the board is that you've got a safety issue with the front stairs. Even though it's a pricey item, if you don't fix the safety issue, you're going to have to close those stairs.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. We'll keep an eye on that and see what we can do over the next budget cycles. So, thank you. And then the final one.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
On the stairs, I mean, it seems glaring to me, why is the design $103,000? To do the design?
Yeah.
Oh, to build it.
To build
Oh,
their
all right,
design,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No worries. But yeah, it's a tear everything out and redo everything, which is a lot of concrete, so yeah. So yeah. And then finally, the grounds, we wanted to remulch all the grounds and really get things spriffed up, because I know there's a lot of folks that have done amazing work out there, and we really need another layer of bark and mulch and get that, but it's $12,000 and we had to get those other things done. And we'll look at that over the next couple years and try to make that happen. Maybe that's next year's Raise the Paddle, is get the mulch done and get some exterior work. So no promises, don't promise. But that's something we could have move forward with that. So any other, yeah.
Thank you. Just a question. Some of the items that are in the upper portion that are the high priority items, actually there's a lot of uncertainty in the numbers for some of those. And if some of those come in lower, will we be seeing things shifting up, such as the mulch?
Definitely, yes. There's a lot of uncertainty with DOGE and various other things and tariffs and different. And so, yes, then we'd have to come, I think Reverend Mary mentioned this earlier, she would come to the board and say, hey, this came 5,000 under, what are we going to do with this? And yes, that would definitely be looked at. Maybe we look at designing the stairs this year and then look at the stairs the following year. Maybe we do mulch. Maybe we've got some other thing that needs to. But oftentimes I found in large budgets like this, when one drops, something else goes up. And so hopefully we would be able to do that and balance those needs. But yes, we would definitely consider that. Definitely consider that.
So maybe you're going to get to this, but what is the total that you're going to ask us to approve? Is that coming next?
Yeah, I think it's on the next slide, hopefully.
Okay, because it's not on the sheet, the paper.
Okay. So, the amount of reserves currently on hand will cover the immediate should-do and operational items, leaving $21,000 in those reserves, which is, I believe, what's the funding from?
The
Capital campaign. And legacy giving. Capital campaign and legacy giving, sorry. Should have brought my notes with me. Leaving $21,000 of that. And so, but it doesn't include the stairs and the mulch at this time. So we've got some funds left. Yes?
So that's must do, should do, and raise the paddle.
Yes. Yeah, sorry.
That's, so the total includes the must do in gold, the should do in pale yellow, and the pink in raise the paddle.
Right. So the 123,102 is the should do and must do. So that's what the congregation will be asked. The raise the paddle has already been allocated because it was raised for those things. So it's the 123,102 that the congregation will be asked to vote on, Jean, in answer to your question.
Thank you, Mary. Sorry about that.
No worries. So while I have the mic, I'll just say we're about 15 minutes over, usual for a forum. Great questions and great engagement, and we knew this one might go a little long. So I think what we want to do is just give you a peek at the 5-year list, just so you see what's coming and some thoughts on that. So maybe 10 more minutes, is that seeming reasonable to folks and doable? Okay, thanks.
Sure. So let's see if we get that. We paused for technical difficulties, which is my fault, sorry. Okay, so scroll down if you would. Oh, shoot. I can't read it right. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what we have on paper.
So pretty much, it's the stuff at the bottom that isn't on the.
Yeah, stuff at the bottom, this stuff here, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at it, we're looking at down the road.
Sorry, Dieter.
Oh, you
Can't
got it,
hear
yeah.
you online
Oh, sorry,
unless
I
you
always do
speak
that.
here.
I'm used to holding something or having a mic on me. So the biggest things we're looking at down the road, beyond the mulch and beyond stairs, which you've already mentioned, these are the next things that we need to look at based on the reserve study, saying, hey, this is going to come due pretty soon here. These are the receipts. This is what you need to have due. And we're looking at some more audiovisual equipment replacement down the road. Classroom, we got to paint floors. We've done the exterior. Time to start working on the interior, right? We need to get the carpet replaced, or maybe make it something we can bring food in. Get carpets replaced, get the walls painted, which is an awful lot of square footage to get all that stuff done. So a lot of it is that, on top of getting the mulch out there and getting things taken care of, and getting the stairs and getting those functional, getting the safety issues resolved with those stairs are the biggest issues that we have coming up in the next 5 years that we looked at. And we're looking at a rather large bit of funding, and we'll probably have to eventually, long-term down the road, maybe paint another section of the roof even, and then eventually long down the road, replace the roof. So, because we're doing the old part of the roof painting this year, that may come up in a few years to get that other part painted, but that's much more difficult to guesstimate in the next 5 years, if that helps. So hopefully that helps. Did y'all, any other questions? Sorry, I wish I would have. Other thing.
So what I said to the board is that it is likely that OUUC will need to raise some major capital funds in these next years. And that could include any number of things. The Legacy Giving Committee could ask for legacy gifts that can be used for any purpose, and that are given now, not later. It could be another capital campaign. It could be working to allocate some of the endowment draw for capital expenses. Could be applying for grants or loans that might be available, and any other fundraising that we might do. So that's coming down the road. There's some things that need to be done in a building that's more than 30 years old now. So, any other questions for me or Dieter about the capital budget? So the congregation will be asked to vote on the 123 and some thousand for the proposed capital needs for this next year. We'll see if we can get them all done this next year, maybe, maybe not. So, any other questions? Anything else online, Teresa?
Thank you guys for caring.
Yeah, thank you for
And
caring.
sitting
Yeah,
here on a
that's why we do
beautiful
this-
day.
That's why we do this meeting. We won't do this level of detail next week, so.
This has to do with my second of the previous motion. Breaking out the expenses for the capital funds really clarifies our budget situation. I think that for people to sort out the ongoing operations versus the structural stuff. Thank you for doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you for pushing that. When I arrived, the Buildings and Grounds team said, we need a reserve study. What's that? And they were right. It's been super helpful, and the board has been really great about, so what do we do with this thing and how do we use it? And here, the capital needs and operational needs were mushed together in one budget, which is confusing, and it's hard to plan ahead for that. So I really commend the Buildings and Grounds team, the congregation, and the board for saying, we're bigger now, we need this, to attend to our beautiful building. How can we best do that?
I just thought of, what about the lawnmower? What are you doing to lock it up so they don't have a third one?
Gerald can answer that.
Actually, for some reason, the shed back there gets broken into regularly, and we've had quite a bit of stuff stolen from the shed. So we have an electric lawnmower now that we have stored in the basement, which is about as inconvenient a place to actually use it from as you could imagine. And quite often, people who are mowing the lawn just bring their own equipment. But we're not actually asking for a purchase of a replacement lawnmower at this time.
I wanted to say that under your management, I really appreciate not seeing mortgage payments and interest on mortgage payments as part of this budget.
Yeah, that's a fabulous, yeah. What a big deal. This congregation is debt-free. And so the prospect of needing to do some bigger building things isn't nearly as scary, because even if a loan is required, and there's a UUA program for loans for buildings, it's not quite as breathtaking as it might have been. So yay to the congregation for doing that. That was part of the capital campaign, was to pay off the mortgage.
And also, I think Jeff Goltz we've mentioned his name, but he does a lot of, we could get another % or 0.5% or 1/4% if we move the money here. So his really kind of attention to those kind of details has been very helpful and above and beyond.
Sure has, yeah. So anything else before we extinguish the chalice? Lovely. Thank you again for your engagement and caring. So as we extinguish our chalice, let's just take a breath and step back from the details. They're important. While they are important, we can retain the big vision of the world that is loving, just, and healthy. That's what we're here for. And may the flame of our chalice help remind us of our commitment to that vision. Thank you all.